Welcome to Tax Sale Insiders, the latest from Tax Sale Resources, bringing you information about tax sales from experts in the industry. TSR has interviewed a variety of industry leaders across the country, including Stephen Morell of Juristeed in Louisiana, Maureen Zink of Carlisle Law in Ohio, John Stanko of Stanko McCarthy Law Group in Illinois, and many, many more. The following is just a small snippet of a longer, in-depth interview with one of these leading industry experts. We interviewed Bev Abrams of Firstrust Bank. Bev has been in the banking industry for over 25 years and has focused primarily on the special lending category, which is where tax lien funding falls. In this clip, Bev talks about how much investors can leverage their capital based on the experience they have in this industry. Bev is a wealth of knowledge teaching you about growing options for your growing fund, so stay tuned.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. I do want to just have a brief disclaimer early on that the views that I'm expressing are mine and have not really been approved or endorsed by Firstrust Bank, and they're basically for general informational purposes only. And I hope I can be helpful.
Absolutely, no worries. Understand or understood, and too, you mentioned adequate capital, and I guess is there what kind of capital does it? Because there's an expense involved, right, for a bank to lend in this space, and so I know there's lots that goes into calculating, what that expense is, how many dollars you need to put out in order to cover that without having exorbitant costs involved with that capital. So what kind of capital does a borrower need to have to really even make it worthwhile for a bank to lend it right now? Anyway, I know it'll change, but.
Well, I think it will depend on what states you're buying in and what your returns will be in those states. Mm-hmm. One thing to keep in mind is that it's the same cost for a bank to implement a $5 million facility as opposed to a $15 million facility. So there's the economies of scale that come into play there. Mm-hmm. So, I think you need to run it through your model when you start the dialogue with the lender, find out where they think their rates will be, how much leverage you can get in terms of, let's just use an example. If you come to a banker and say, I've been buying for 3 years, I have $1.5 million, $2 million of capital invested. Can I now leverage my fund? Depending on, again, your experience, your background in the industry, a banker may say, I would start out at 2 or 3 times leverage to give you some leverage as you start to scale. But it will cost you anywhere between, 4 to 5%. And these are just made up numbers. It can generally, change per bank and per situation. Mm-hmm. So, run that through your model. There are costs involved with setting up a leveraging structure. There's the cost of capital. There typically may be a startup or setup cost with the bank. There may be a monthly administrative cost that's associated with the facility. There could also be a custodian or a servicing cost that's associated. So be well aware of what, your cost of capital will be and any other ancillary fees or costs that are associated with the facility. Build that into your model and, with your projected redemptions and yield on your pools, and see where your returns will be. And then you can scale it to see where your pivot point would be as to, when it makes sense to start leveraging your capital and your funds.